So starting the new parak, Mem Beis Amid Beis. Nigmar Hadin, when we finally get to the end of we get to the verdict, and the unfortunate defendant has been found guilty. They take him out to give him skila. They picked skila because skila is a chamadik. Rashi says it's the first of the when you list the different methods of execution, it's the first one listed. So you bring him out. The place where skila was done was outside of Bezdin. You take out the makal. Makal is someone who was mavarach Hashem, to use a euphemism. So he gets the din is he gets skila. Pesach Bezdin. One man stands by the entrance to Bezdin. He has like a kerchief or a flag in his hand. And there is a horse far away from him in order that the horseman could see the flag. If the Bezdin, I guess the Bezdin was just sitting around until the execution was done. It's like, this is a very common thing. For some reason, in the secular courts also, in the Supreme Court, they're always getting last-minute requests for clemency and to review something. So the Bezdin was waiting in case something came up until he was executed. So while they were waiting, one of the judges says, I just thought of a reason why he should go free. Halom meinif besudrin, the man standing by the door would wave the flag, vasus rots, and then the horseman would go start running, mambidin, and he would stop them. He would stop the execution in its place. Even if the defendant says about himself that I have a svara why I should be let loose, based on his arguments, they'll bring him back to the court and redecide, make another Gemara din, taking into account his arguments. And he can do that even 4 or 5 times. As long as there's substance to what he's saying, the Gemara is going to say, obviously, we're not going to keep taking him back forever because he keeps saying, I have another idea, and then they take him back, and then when they get back, he says, I don't think you're allowed to kill people on Mondays, and there's no such thing. They're not going to keep doing that. The Gemara is going to explain exactly how it works. Zok the Gemara. The Mishnah said, Nigmar din, my sin is like that the Beis Haskila, the place where they did execution, was outside of the Bezdin. The Sulay, not any further. Vatanya Beis Haskila yichutz l'sholish machnas. The Beis Haskila was outside of the 3 machnas. There's machna Shechina, machna Levia, machna Yisrael. So, which in Yerushalayim, the corollary, the analogs of that would be the Harabayis, the Chotzer, the actual Beis Hamikdash, and the Harabayis, and the city. So when we say you go take out Chutz l'shalosh machnas, it means you have to take him out to be executed outside. The Brisa says outside of the city. So why are we saying you just take him outside of the Bezdin? You really have to take him out. You have to take him out of the city. So it's like the Brisa says that you take him out of the city. It's coming to tell you, what if there's a Bezdin that's sitting outside of the city? It's coming to tell you, you still can't do the skila inside of the Bezdin. You have to make it outside. One reason is, first of all, so that we don't want the place of judgment to be the place of execution. They're going to look like they're murderers. They're killers. And we don't want the Bezdin to be associated with that. And secondly, because you want to delay. You don't want to, on the spot, as soon as he's found guilty, they just throw him down a couple of stories and start throwing rocks at him. You give him, if you take him outside, that will give a little bit of time during which time the judges might be able to come up with a reason to acquit him. Where does this come from? That which it said in the Brisa, you have to take him out of Shalosh Machnas, out of the city. The Tanur Rabban, Hoitze Hamakal El Michutz Lamachna. The Torah says, this is talking about, right, the Makalo, that's what we were talking about in the Brisa, in the Mishnah, that you take out someone who's Mavarach Hashem, who's a Megadif. So we say Chutz Al Michutz Lamachna. Chutz L'Gimel Machna. So we say, and that means out of 3 Machnas. So Gemara, Chutz L'Gimel Machna, say Ein El Chutz L'Machna Achas. How do I know it means outside of all 3 Machnas? Maybe it just means outside of the Beis Hamikdash or the Harabayis, but how do I know it means outside of the city? Or but in the Midbar it would have been outside of the Shechina or outside of the Machna Levi and outside of the Machna Yisrael. So how do we know it goes out of all the Machnas? Maybe just out of the Machna Shechina. So Nemer Kan Michutz L'Machna. Whenever Parman Yisrael from Chutz L'Machna, the Torah talks about 2 different types of parim that are brought as a carbon. The par Kain Gadol, if the Kain Gadol does a chait, and par Helm Davashot Tzibur, if the whole Tzibur does an Aveira because they were misled, so they do it b'shaygig. So there's a par that's brought, and that par doesn't get the usual treatment of a carbon, but rather it's brought outside of the city and burnt outside of the city. It's not burnt, it's not brought on the Mizbeach. So so it says about those parim, these 2 parim. It says michutz lamachna. Mal alon chutz l'shalosh machnas, afkan chutz l'shalosh machnas. Just like it says by chutz lamachna of the parim, it means outside of the shalosh machnas. So too by our din of where you kill the makal. For the Gemara v'hasa minalan, Gemara says, okay, you're just pushing down the problem. You keep on transferring the problem. How do we know over there that it's michutz l'shalosh machnas? Just as chutz l'machna. The Tanur Rabban v'hoiti is kol hapar el michutz l'machna. You take all the parim davashot tzibur and the par kain gadol. What does that mean? Chutz l'shalosh machnas. Ata omer chutz l'shalosh machnas ein el chutz l'machna achas. Maybe it's only outside of 1 machna. Because you omer el michutz l'machna b'par ha'eda. Since it says by par helm davashot tzibur that chutz l'machna she'ein tamid loimer. You didn't have to say that. Shekvar nema b'sarf oisei kashashar v'sapar harishin. It already said by the par kain Mashiach that it has to be chutz l'machna. So what does it say chutz l'machna also by the par helm davar? Since it says that you're burning it in the same place as the par kain gadol. So l'imay machna shia. That tells you it has to be outside of 2 machnas. So kashu aimer el michutz l'machna badeshen. Then the Torah, the pasuk continues, and it says that you also bring the deshen to the place where you burnt the parim, and it says by that also mechutz lamachna. There's no need to say by the deshen that it goes. The deshen is the burnt, the leftover burnt wood. What was burnt on the mizbeach is then brought outside of the city. So it says legabi the deshen that it's also brought to the same places where the parim are brought. It says that it says shefach hadeshen. That's where you're bringing the michutz. You bring it to the same place as the par, which is it already said chutz lamachna. So why does it say again by the deshen it's michutz lamachna? Litin loy machna shlishis. That's where we learned the 3rd machna. Okay, so we have basically. To simplify it, it says by the parim and the serafim, and it says by the deshen mechutz lamachna. We have 3 mechutz lamachna, so that tells you it has to be outside of all 3 machnas, which is the equivalent of outside of the city. Instead of learning from the 2 parim, which we're able to prove that they have their mechutz lamachna out of the mechutz l'shalosh machnas, let's learn out of shchutei chutz. There's a din that if you shecht an animal, a carbon is supposed to be shechted on the harabayis. If you shecht it chutz from the harabayis, you passel the carbon and it's a chiv chorus. And we say mala utzui the Gemara mala l'chutz l'machna achas. That means it just has to be outside. If it's done outside of the harabayis, or outside the machna shchina in the midbar. If it's in the machna levi, yechayiv for shchutei chutz. Afkan chutz l'machna achas. Let's say that where you do the execution of the makallel. So so it should also be maybe we should learn this out. The Sairif, the Makallel from Shchutei Chutz. Zak Gemara, Mistavra Miparim. Sorry, I get distracted because when I'm on my laptop instead of on my phone, strangely enough, my text messages pop up. And I just got a text message from a tax lawyer I used to work with, a guy, telling me that he just called up his cousin, Jared Kushner, about something. And it was very tempting to try to figure out what he was talking about. Anyway, but the Gemara asks, why do we learn out? So why do we learn Makallel, where he gets executed from the Parim Hanisrafim? Let's learn it out from Shchutei Chutz. So the Gemara, Mistami Parim Hanisrafim Havli L'Meir. Shechein Hoitzi, it has four characteristics that make it similar to Makallel. First of all, by both of them, it says Hoitzi. It says Hoitzi is Hamakallel, and it says Hoitzi is Kol HaPar. El Michutz LaMachne, it uses Lashon El Michutz LaMachne by both the Makallel and by the Parim, which it doesn't have by Shchutei Chutz. Machshir. So Machshir is a little bit. There's two ways of looking at it. Either Shchutei Chutz is doing something wrong. We're saying when you take it out, that's the wrong thing to do. So you're not facilitating the carbon, and by Shchutei Chutz you're doing it incorrectly. The Parim Hanisrafim and the execution, they're supposed to be Michutz LaMachne. So they're more similar in that regard. U'mechaper. And finally, a very similar type of svara, that it's also a mechaper, that the when you execute the makallel, that's his kapara. Similarly, when you bring the param hanisrafim b'chutz, that's also a mechaper. Masha ein kain, shchutei chutz is exactly the opposite. You're ruining your carbon. Zak Gemara, adarabba meshchutei chutz havlei l'melech. I'll say the other way around. There are four characteristics of Shchutei Chutz that are more similar to Makallel. Shechein Adam Choyte b'nesham. Shechein Adam. First of all, it's both an Adam, right? Shchutei Chutz is the person bringing it out, and the Makallel is also a person coming out for execution. Masha Enkain, by the Parim Hanisrafim, you're bringing out a carbon. And Chayta, both of them, the person was the person who's being executed was Chayta, and the Shchutei Chutz is doing something wrong. Mashenke in Parim Hanisrafim, the par didn't do anything wrong. The par is supposed to be brought out. And B'neshama, in both cases, you're bringing out the animal to burn by Shchutei Chutz. You're coming to shech the animal b'chutz, and you're going to obviously execute the person. So that's more similar than parim hanisrafim that were already shechted inside, and you're bringing them out to be burnt outside of Yerushalayim. And pigul, that the rule is that if someone has a machshavas chutz, if someone has a machshava of chutz l'zmana or chutz l'mkaime, they're both considered to be pigul. So both Shchutei Chutz and the person who's being executed, that so the person who's being executed, he is there's no shaykhs to pigul. Obviously, when you're talking about someone who is a murderer, he's being brought out. Pigul is only by a carbon. And Shchutei Chutz also, you're bringing something out. There's no pigul involved because this is not a kosher carbon in the first place. Pigul is, by Ezra Hashem, when we'll get to Kachim, we're going to learn a lot about pigul. But pigul is it's like I would say the most central concept in kachim, that when you bring a carbon that's otherwise kosher, but you have a machshava at the time of shchita to do the zrika in the wrong place or the wrong time, that makes a pigul. So shchutei chutz, since you shechted it outside of the place, it's not a kosher carbon. But the carbonis, the parim are both shaykh to pigul. So it's not that's the fourth way that they're more similar. So the Gemara says you have 4 against 4, 4 ways in which the makal is similar to the shnei parim, and 4 ways in which it's similar to shchutei chutz. So the Gemara machshir mi machshir adif. The Gemara says no. In the end, the fact that these two things, both the parim and the makal being brought outside to be executed, both of these cases they bring brought out to do to facilitate this going forward. They're doing the right thing. We're saying the going out is the wrong thing to do. You're not allowed to bring it outside. So why would we compare saying you're not allowed to go out only one out of the machna shchina from shchutei chutz? Rather, we'll learn it out from the thing we're saying you have to bring out the parim hanisrafim outside of the 3 machnas. Rav Papa says a different svara. Moshe was sitting in the machna leviyah. That's the second of the 3 machnas. Moshe was already had a start. He was already in the machlavi, and then the Moshe told him, take this makal and bring him out of the chutz lamachna. Chutz lamachna levius, take him out to the machna Yisrael. And then it says v'yotziu es hamakal mechutz lamachna, and he took out the makal mechutz lamachna. That's chutz lamachna Yisrael. It started by machna levi, and then it says 2 times hoitzi and yotziu. So that tells you that he takes out of 2 additional machnas. That gets him outside of the 3 machnas. So this is an alternate place to learn out the din. The second one that says that's not an instruction to Moshe. That's saying what happened, that he actually did it. The Gemara, no, asiya behedjik siba. That we already know. Bnei Yisrael also kashatziva Hashem es Moshe. That Bnei Yisrael already did that, like Hashem commanded. So once it says Bnei Yisrael also, that they did as they were commanded, why does it say that they threw a stone on him? It already said that they should. So if you're saying Bnei Yisrael also makes it that which it said by Yaitzi is extra because it already said that they did as they were instructed, then as far as the Vayirgamu, it also is extra. My Avdile, what are you going to do with that pasuk? So he gets stoned, but not his clothing. He gets stoned without unclothed, without wearing any clothing. Evan, what does the Evan tell you? That if he dies even with a single stone, that's enough. If the first stone kills him, you don't have that. That's good. Evan. The pasuk says, that's the instructions, and then it says that they threw a stone on him. So why does it say both? Because of Rahman Evan I would have thought if the Torah said only Evan and not Avanim, I would say if you threw the one stone and it wasn't successful, then the guy goes free. Because of Rahman Avanim. So that's why the Torah added on Avanim to tell you that you keep throwing stones at him. Because Rahman Avanim Avamina Meikar Naisi Tarti. I would have thought that you throw a bunch of stones at him right at the beginning. Because Rahman Evan, that the proper way to do is they take one big stone and they hurl it at him, and it's supposed to kill him. But if that doesn't work, they keep throwing more stones. The first stone, it's Rahmanas. Right? If you kill someone by constantly throwing a bunch of rocks, it's obviously very painful. It's more merciful to throw a big boulder on him and kill him instantly. Correct the Gemara. The The Gemara says that the Tana said, the Tana Rabban, so we said that you learn it out from this Gzeir Shava of Machnas. So how could you now say that, no, we just learned it out? It had said it comes from the Chutz Lamachnas. And now you're changing it and you're saying there's nothing to do with that. It says V'hoitzi and V'yoitziu. So Gemara, Ilu Nemakama, Ilu Nemakama, sorry. What he means to say is, if we wouldn't have had, what Rapapa was just saying is, if we wouldn't have the Gzeir Shava, we could, that I'm saying, the Gzeir Shava is just a backup. If we couldn't have learned it from the Haitzi and Yetziu, then the Bryce is saying you could also learn it from the Gzeir Shava. Hayisiyayim Gzeir Shava. But now that we have a pasuk, the Gzeir Shava is not needed. That's the way Papa will understand. A very unusual formulation, right? Gzeir Shava, we have to have a Messiah for Gzeir Shava. So now we're saying the Gzeir Shava is Leitzarach Manashach. You either have a Gzeir Shava or you don't. And now what's the Gzeir Shava for? I guess the Gemara, presumably Rapapa would have a different explanation of what you do with that Gzeir Shava. But this Brisa was just saying an alternate in case you wouldn't use the pasuk. Now we have a third explanation of where we learned the din that the makal is brought outside of shalosh machnas. So Rashi Amar, he starts off the same as Rapapa. He was sitting in the machna levia. The Torah says you should bring him out. So that's chutz lamachna via. El mi chutz lamachna. So he doesn't learn that from the Yoitziu, but because of the two machnas, chutz lamachna, and then it says michutz lamachna again. V'yetziu es makal lasi, and that which it said v'yetziu es makal, which is what Rapapa used to tell you that it goes outside of the machna Yisrael. That's to tell you asiya that they actually carried out the instruction. Asiya behed yeksebahu bnei solasu kashatziv Hashem es Moshe hu bebayalei chad l'smicha v'chad l'dchia. That's to tell you, because there's a din also that part of the din of skila is that the Torah says that they have to lay their hands on the bezdin lays their hands on the person who's being killed or the executioner. And one is that they push him off of a high place before they throw the stones on him. So that's what the pasuk is telling him. So you said, so you have an explanation. V'yetziu es hamakal, what it's telling you. But what about that it says v'yetziu and v'hoitza by parman esrafim? What are you going to darshan from that? So the Gemara kasha. Ein chanami, that's a good kasha. Okay. So we said in the Mishnah, Echad Oimid, there was one man standing with the flag, waiting to hear. And then when he heard the news, if he heard that they were being found a reason to let him off, then he would wave the flag and allow the runner on the horse to go let the executioners know to stop. Amrav Huna, Chitali, Echad Evan Sheniskal Ba, Echad Eight Shenitla Ba, both the stone that the person is stoned with, Echad Eight Shenitla Ba, and the wood that is used to hang him. After a skila, they would hang him. And the sword that was used to behead someone, and the cloth that was used to strangle someone, they were all paid for from public funds. My timer. Obviously, you don't tell the guy you caused this, so therefore you have to pay for it. We don't make a person pay for his own method of execution. Boy Rav Huna, Suder Shemanifim boy. The flag that you use to wave to get him off, the shusharotz, and the horse that goes to run to let him know if they found a reason to let him off. Umamidan, sharotz umamidan, that would stop them. Mishal mihu, who pays for that? Kivan datzol didei mididehu, since it's paying for his salvation, he should pay for it. Idilma, kivan the beidinim achayvan mevad ba'atzol mididu. Since the Bezdin is required to expend effort to let him off, to acquit him, they have to pay for it. Besu, Hada Amar of Chia Barashi, Baravashi, Amar of Chizda, They would give him a sedative of a little bit of levina in yain, to calm him down. Give a wine to the person who's lost, the yain labari nefesh, and give wine to someone who's depressed. Tanya, Nashim Yikar Shabishalayim, how you misnavim, they would donate it, and they would bring it to that the person shouldn't have a terrible death without any sedation. Not loinis nadru Nashim Yikar Shabishal, who would provide it? If they didn't provide it, would that sedative come from the accused, or would it come from the Shel Tzibur? So Gemara Havade Mistavim Mishal Tzibur. That certainly comes from the Tzibur. Kinuch Siv Tnu Midhu. Since it says the lashon Tnu, that's what we learned it out from the pasuk of Tnu, and Tnu is the lashon Rabbim, so that means from the Tzibur. But Minei Rachav Rav Huna Meir Sheshes. So Amar Echad Minat Talmidim Yesh Lamed Olav Schus V'Nishtate. One of the Talmidim says, I have a schus to say to get him off, and then he loses the ability to speak. Now, do we accept it? We say we don't know what it is, but we have to accept it as a valid argument, or do we say no? We never heard what his argument. Maybe it was shtus. Menafach Rav Sheshes b'dei biyadeh. Rav Sheshes pushed it away. He said, "Nishtatek afilu echad b'seifa olam nami." If they're quiet, if you're going to listen to someone who's not able to say what his reason is, then even someone who's on the other end of the world, maybe someone has a svara that we haven't thought of. So you can't accept a svara coming from one of the Talmidim. He's not on the Bezdin and say maybe he has a svara, because then maybe someone has a svara that no, he's not even here. In fact, the Gemara, no, what do you mean? Hasam like Amar, Hachak Amar. This Talmud said he had a svara, so there's more of a basis than saying just because there might be something anywhere. So what's the din? Tashma Adam Rav Yosef Bachanina Echad Madim Shezichu Meis Roinas Kilu Chai. We said if one of the Talmidim says a reason why he should be pater, and then he died, we treat him as if he's chai and we accept his vote. Zicha in, but the mashmais on that is only because he said his reason why he should be pater. But loy zicha loy. But if he didn't get a chance to say it, then it would not be effective. So you see that he has to actually say. So Gemara, zicha pshitali amar tibayali. Says no, that's not a raya. If he's zicha, then obviously we listen to him. But the question is by tibayali. Amar, when he just said that he has him, he didn't say it. That's the question. Zok Gemara weiter. Afilu who, even if so we said the final thing we said is that if the accused says he has a reason why he should be acquitted, we go back even 4 or 5 times. In fact, even the first 2 times, but that it's only if it is yesh ba mamish. It's only on the first 2 times. On the first 2 times, we see that we take him back, and then we afterwards decide whether there's mamish b'dvarav. But after that, the people who are with him, they'll decide for themselves. If he says something that sounds nonsense, they don't bring him back at all. Amar Papa Terguma the Pamshni of Elach says so. When the Mishnah says even 4 times, that means from the Pamshni of Elach, Paka you have to have mamish b'dvar. Mino yadi. How are we going to know whether there's any substance to what he's saying? After the first 2 times, you send him with a few Talmidei Chachamim to the execution, so they can immediately assess whether his arguments have any substance. If they hear that he's saying something that makes sense, then they send him back. If not. Why don't we send these Talmidim, these Rabbanim with him from the beginning, and not send him back even the first 2 times? So since he's nervous, the first 2 times, he might not explain what his issue is very clearly, so therefore we have to bring him back, regardless of whether what he says makes sense. Thank you so much for doing this. Tomorrow, Bez Hashem, we'll do it 6:30 on Zoom.